Deep in the courtyard at 262 Piotrkowska Street stands the magnificent palace that once belonged to the factory owner Schweikert family, which has been the seat of the European Institute since 1993. Built at the beginning of the 20th century, it is clearly distinguishable from other Łódź factory residences. Situated far from the factory, it refers to the French chateau entre cour, a jardin type, meaning a symmetrical establishment consisting of a main body and accompanying side buildings, between which a stately courtyard is located. The originality of the residence is emphasized by the high mansard roof and the semi-circular columned portico. With the portico as a backdrop, Witek Długosz, played by the young Bogusław Linda, who only had a few performances before camera at that time, the protagonist of Krzysztof Kieślowski's film Blind Chance, along with other medical graduates, pose for a commemorative photo. The film resembles a clearly structured philosophical fable. The same character experiences three variants of his life, which are arranged according to rather random developments. After moving from Poznań to Łódź, Boy lives with his aunt, a pre-war communist. Here he passes his final exams and becomes a medical student. When he's in the third year of university, his father dies, and he decides to take a dean's leave and move to Warsaw. He hurriedly buys a ticket at the railway station. It is probably the most famous railway station scene in Polish cinema, and it takes place at the former Łódź Fabryczna railway station. When Witek runs into the platform, it turns out that the train has already started. Witek doesn't give up and, with a heavy bag on his hand, starts chasing the train with all his might. Bogusław Linda recalled that to make the bag look suitably stuffed, bricks and stones were put into it. As the scene was being shot throughout the day, the actor decided at one point that he couldn't run any longer with that much weight and told the director about it. Kieślowski, unable to believe it himself, grabbed the bag and tried to run. When he damaged his back in that activity, he allowed to reduce the weight of the bag. Coming back to the story of Witek Długosz, his future depends on whether or not he gets on the train on time. His fate is arranged in three possible variants. The first one is where the boy succeeds getting into the last carriage. On the train, he meets an old communist Werner, played by Tadeusz Łomnicki, due to whom Witek soon starts to make a career in the communist youth organization. In the second version of the biography, he fails to catch up with the train. On the platform, he gets into a fight with a railway guard trying to stop him. As a result, he is sentenced to 1 month of public works. While serving his sentence, he meets an oppositionist, Jarek Borkowski, who draws him into his circle. Witek starts to work in a secret print shop. In the third scenario, he also fails to jump onto the speeding train. On his way back from the train station, he meets Olga, a fellow student. Thanks to her, he's going back to university. The third version of life is the scene shot on the representative driveway in the front of Schweikert's palace. A group of 1978 medical graduates, including Witek, pose in front of the building for a commemorative photo with the dean. Curiously, the interiors of the medical school in the film were played by another building, the former Jakub Herz Palace at 4 Kościuszki Street, meaning today's rectorate of the medical university. After taking the above-mentioned photograph, students walk away carrying on conversations. Witek is approached by the dean and is offered a full-time job at the university. He feels like he's the chosen one. Witek also soon begins to work as a doctor in the emergency room. In this version of life, he stays out of politics in an attempt to remain neutral. In each of the three variants of his story, almost everything in his life is a coincidence. A place he ends up in, the people he meets, and consequently the idea he is going to live by. However, in all versions of his biography, despite all circumstances, he always stays true to his conscience by listening to his inner voice. Coming back to the building, or rather entering into its interior, we can see a representative staircase leading to a glazed mezzanine level. It is a place especially favored by filmmakers. On Andrzej Wajda's Promised Land, a stately stairway leads to a room which is a combination of an exchange office, a restaurant, and a stock exchange. The interior is filled with the hustle and bustle of merchants doing business, languages of different ethnicities living in the 19th century Łódź are mixed together. A well-known character here is Moritz Welt, played by Wojciech Przoniak. It is also where Karol Borowiecki, Daniel Olbrychski, holds business talks with the factory owner Miller, Franciszek Pieczka. For the first time, we meet here Mr. Boom. Boom, played by Marek Walczewski, who ultimately turns out to be the perpetrator of the arson attack on Borowiecki, Welt and Baum factory. One of the most interesting film episodes which took place inside the palace were scenes from the fourth episode of the series More Than Life at Stake, entitled Café Rosé. The place played the German consulate in Istanbul, where the reception was given. Among the guests was, of course, Hans Kloss, played by Stanisław Mikulski, and the mysterious Madame Rosé, played by Alina Janowska, who was murdered during the reception. Since the 1990s, the palace took an extended hiatus from its film career until 2019, when in the film The Courier by Władysław Pasikowski, it was used to stage the office of the British Prime Minister Winston Churchill. The changing owners over the years have contributed to the considerable devastation of the entire establishment. Since 1993, the palace has been the residence of the European Institute, and the entire complex of the palace and park went through a complete renovation.